Born without magic and deemed unnecessary to exist, he was cast aside as a sacrifice on an island where only demons thrive. Yet, instead of succumbing, he was chosen by a demigod who trained him, not just to fight, but to stand tall for the first time in his life. When legends themselves serve as your mentors, weakness becomes an impossibility. This is the tale of a boy who discovered his strength by reclaiming his worth. His name was Godo Toma, and he spent much time mourning his fate. Despite being the eldest son of the renowned Godo family, he lacked the strength required to wield a sword. Those around him pitied their master, yet helplessness remained unavoidable. His body refused to handle magic, and all he yearned for was recognition. His father's beatings branded him weak, a disgrace to his lineage, and no matter how loudly he cried out, brutality persisted unchecked. His mother, with gentle hands, tried to soothe him, whispering that he was strong, her pride and her comfort. But in her absence, alone with his sorrow, Toma knew the bitter truth. He was not strong at all. As his mother's life ebbed away, she begged his forgiveness, calling him her poor son. Years of relentless effort passed, with Toma pouring every ounce of strength into training. He swung his sword up and down, determined that this time he would succeed. When hunger called, he retreated to his chamber, where the only nourishment came from bitter nutritional pills, used to maximize his limited intake. They tasted foul, often bringing tears in earlier days, but eventually he had become numb to their flavor. After swallowing the pills, he resumed training until his little brother Toji appeared with friends, sneering at him. "Trash!" Toji spat, demanding to know who granted Toma permission to use the training grounds. Fear made him hesitate as he uttered his name. Toji's grin widened. He should have called him Mr. Toji. With malicious glee, Toji shoved Toma hard enough to send him sprawling. "Just a small push," his brother taunted. How pathetic that life's so bad when even basic strength is missing. The boy painstakingly rose from the ground and crouched down, contemplating magic. Power dwelled within everyone, flowing through their bodies, yet for some reason, it refused to circulate in him. Toji, mockingly, remarked that Toma just brandished a stick daily, implying he should have some magic, but nothing changed. Toma's mind drifted. Children without magic were just like him, unaware of its flow within. Once, he considered himself no different from a child, especially when unable to respond to his cruel brother. Toji's irritation grew. He called him impudent, a nerve to ignore him. Once again, he lunged forward, kicking and berating Toma. All the while, Toma thought about his twisted body, possessing magical potential yet incapable of channeling it. Despite the curse of his genetics, he refused to accept defeat, determined to find a way to prove himself. In the land bathed in eternal sunshine, there was no room for weakness or doubt. Toji's mere finger snap intimidated him instantly, causing the protagonist to flinch in fear. His brother's laughter echoed as he mocked, signaling his friends to witness the display of terror. The friends erupted into boisterous laughter, mockingly urging their leader not to tease the trembling boy further. Clearly, he had a penchant for clownish antics. The protagonist inwardly commented, "He truly is the weakest person alive." As he hesitantly rose, he apologized quietly to his brother for disturbing him, unsure whether he deserved it. The brother replied with biting sarcasm, telling him to take his time. That was his apology for fooling around, and now he was eager to showcase his abilities. Frightened, the protagonist begged him not to proceed. Within this land of the sun, there existed swordsmen, each wielding unique weapons imbued with special abilities. These weapons represented the pinnacle of power across these lands. Toji, with a sneer, commanded him to observe carefully and asked if he understood. Then, summoning his magical energy, Toji activated his burning skill and declared, "You!" His weapon blazed in his grip, the sword of destiny. Its appearance illuminated the air with an ominous glow. Toji glared at Toma and proclaimed, "This is his sword of fate. Yoko, you should also draw your sword of fate. After all, your weapon consumes everything it touches." Holding his sword close to the protagonist's throat, Toji grinned mischievously. So what? Does he even have his own sword? His brother and friends jeered nastily, their laughter echoing cruelly. Toma thought silently, this is a power he can never attain, no matter how hard he tries. The Sword of Fate could only be obtained from the Emperor at specific ages, 3, 5, and 7, through an imperial blessing bestowed only upon chosen ones. Although anyone in the land of the sun could attempt to claim it, the true power was intricately linked to one's lineage. Most who succeeded came from families of respected swordsmen, and Toma belonged to one of the highest orders. His father, Godu Togen, was one of the 7 great heavenly saints bearing the purple rank, and everyone recognized his mastery when he received the imperial blessing. Yet, amidst the mocking laughter of others, his father's sword failed to manifest. Furious and humiliated, the old man's wrath burned fiercely. Toji, still mocking, pressed on, eager to see if the fool would be spared. Their family had long been renowned protectors of the imperial family, proud swordsmen guarding the realm for generations. Yet, such scum had sullied the proud Godu name. Toma felt humiliated at the prospect of being forever ashamed of his bloodline. Unnoticed, he reflected humbly. He hadn't chosen to be born into this lineage. He wished he could prove himself beyond genetic inheritance. It was then that Toji, perhaps sensing his thoughts, let out a disgusted laugh and spat. Yes, you are what you are because your mother was also worthless. She was a complete weakling. Scum is scum. The words cut deep. Unable to accept such insult, Toma's fury erupted. He shouted at his brother, commanding him not to speak poorly of his mother. In anger, he advanced with his stick, aiming to strike. But Toji easily brushed him aside, parrying the attack with a dismissive chuckle. Calmly, he added, according to our father, he only loved her for her face, nothing more. Enraged, Toma tried to strike his irksome brother once more, only for Toji to swiftly block the blow with his sword. He mocked him casually, recalling, 3 years have passed since I started pretending to train, swinging my stick tirelessly every day. Yet all my efforts proved futile. He continued with a hint of irony. Sometimes, waking up early does no good at all, as if I hadn't done anything. One of his friends remarked that his desperate actions had become even more absurd. Toji responded thoughtfully. He must choose his future bride more carefully, or he might follow in their father's footsteps. Leading the family won't be easy. Leaning over the dejected young man, Toji added sharply, does he now realize that his daily struggles are worth less than a single day's effort? The silent, tearful protagonist only longed for recognition, nothing more. Eventually, the day of the sacrifice to Gokuma Island arrived. Toon believed exile was the optimal solution. He cursed under his breath, lamenting his long-standing desire to personally eliminate his target. Yet he hesitated, aware that doing so would spark scandal. Thus far, he had allowed the man to live. Fist clenched with rage, Toon shouted, this method kills him quietly and keeps our family's name intact. Activating flame magic in his palm, he ominously declared, it's time to proceed with this plan. Meanwhile, the protagonist chewed on medicinal pills to steady himself. At that moment, swordsmen approached, demanding his name. Recognizing their intent, he grew wary and asked what they wanted. The leader commanded his subordinates to seize the young man. They grabbed him forcefully, dragging him away. Toma struggled, shouting in protest, what are they doing? What do they want from me? The swordsman rudely silenced him, slapping his face, and he finally understood where they were taking him. Before him sat the Emperor of the Sun Kingdom. Murmurs rippled through the gathering crowd. Is this really the eldest son of the god family? Could it be true? So, he's the sacrifice for today, they whispered. Toma thought to himself, I better keep quiet now. The Emperor eyed him and questioned, is this the candidate for the sacrifice this time? The swordsman confirmed it was. The protagonist was stunned. The Emperor himself? Just then, Togen appeared before the throne. The young man desperately called out to his father, but a swordsman holding him struck him across the face, ordering him to remain silent. Togan then addressed the emperor, asserting, "Toma is my unfortunate son." The emperor inquired, "Is the boy all right?" Togan fell to his knees, declaring with conviction, "They serve the Gato family, loyal servants of your majesty." He believed that their loyalty was genuine, even if their sin-tainted bloodline no longer sufficed. If even a trace of noble imperial blood flowed through his veins, it could alter everything. Recognizing this, he made the difficult decision to sacrifice his own son this time. The protagonist wondered in bewilderment. What does sacrifice really mean? What is his father talking about? The emperor reflected carefully on Toon's words. Then he explained that, historically, sacrificial rituals were performed to soothe vengeful spirits. They insisted that having noble blood truly carried significance, and he, as a loyal subject, might play that crucial role. Wiping away tears that threatened to spill, the emperor continued his explanation. He noted that sacrifices had once been a desperate attempt to eliminate sinners. Yet, he suspected that this practice might be inadvertently shortening the interval between impending catastrophes. Finally, the emperor declared firmly, "This time, the sacrifice shall be the heir of the Goto family." Rising from his throne, he commanded everyone to prepare accordingly. The swordsmen bowed their heads and responded, "It shall be done." The protagonist was overwhelmed with confusion and shock. What was happening? Sacrifice was no trivial matter. He had just begun to live, after all. Without hesitation, the swordsmen silently activated the sacrificial seal and branded the protagonist with it. Meanwhile, the emperor told Togon that his resolve was unwavering and that he accepted his duty. As a member of the Goto family, a distant relative of the Hiyu bloodline, he carried their heritage in his veins. No better candidate for a sacrifice could be found. After bidding the emperor farewell, the satisfied Togon returned to his duties. Meanwhile, the protagonist endured the pain from the brand scorching his skin. Those present took perverse pleasure in his suffering, viewing the brand as a mark of shame. The Goto family had cleverly executed their plan, saving face while resolving the issue of his perceived inadequacies. It was a grotesque spectacle. Writhing in pain, the protagonist watched his father depart without a word. His desire to call out was lost as consciousness faded. Later, he awoke to a blinding light directly in his eyes. Blinking against the glare, he noticed a skull with a hole in its forehead lying nearby. Frightened, he sat up abruptly, clutching his head, and asked himself what his father was thinking and what had transpired. He observed the scar branded on his chest, the unmistakable mark of victimhood. Looking ahead, he saw Gokuma Island, puzzled and confused. The legend was familiar. Long ago, the first emperor, founder of this land of the sun, had defeated a demon. However, the demon's vengeful spirit had returned, bringing calamity to the realm. Every decade, a sacrificial offering was made to the island where the demon had fallen, to stave off its wrath. This was Gokuma Island, the protagonist realized with resignation. So, this was the reason they had left him here. He reflected on how he had always believed that, regardless of how he was treated, his family would never abandon him. Deep down, he held on to the hope that someday he would be accepted. His heart believed it, but pain overwhelmed him, and tears welled up. Was it arrogant to wish for recognition and acceptance from others? Was it wrong to seek a place where he might be accepted? If he had been born into a normal family with a typical body, would anyone have embraced him? He could no longer understand anything. His mind was clouded, his thoughts fragmented. Suddenly, monstrous figures materialized before him, slowly approaching with sinister intent, their forms and movements exuding menace. In a hysterical laugh, he watched them, feeling an overwhelming exhaustion. As their terrifying roars echoed around him, he thought, "Let it all end. I want to go with my mother." Lying on the ground, he closed his eyes, resigned to his fate. Yet, unexpectedly, a magical whirlwind sprang into existence, scattering the monsters with its swirling force. He looked around in astonishment and whispered, "He's not dead." His mother's protection had always been a guiding light, her pleas for forgiveness echoing in his mind for giving him this body. But he knew she was not to blame. Clutching his stick tighter, he resolved that despite his despised form, he still deserved his place as his mother's child. He would fight till the end. Hope flickered within him that his mother might someday be proud of him, and he dedicated himself to proving it. Taking a fighting stance, he shouted at the monsters to clear the way. They rushed at him en masse, and he swung his stick left and right, shouting battle cries and swinging in desperation. Their strength was overwhelming. They swarmed him, tearing at his flesh with their enormous teeth. Yet he refused to surrender. "No, I won't die," he thought fiercely. In that moment, a demigod named Tenin appeared with a commanding cry, "Incredible resilience!" Surprised, the protagonist watched as Tenin dispelled all the monsters with a single wave of his hand, decapitating them effortlessly. The hero lost consciousness amid the chaos. When the monsters were vanquished, Tenin hovered above, looking around with curiosity. He asked aloud, "What island is this?" Upon inspection, he saw a barrier shimmering across the land, preventing outside access. It was an ancient yet immensely powerful shield, seemingly decrepit in appearance but formidable in strength. Only those bearing a particular bloodline could pass through it, an elegant yet potent defense mechanism. The barrier was not sealed, but it required understanding and caution to navigate. Given the numerous dangerous monsters on this island, he realized it would be difficult to explore or breach the barrier without encountering enemies. He should have been more attentive from the start. Just then, the protagonist regained consciousness and immediately faced another assault from the monsters. Despite his efforts to fend them off, they tore into his body with ruthless ferocity. Looking down from above, Tenin exclaimed, "Such immense vital energy!" With a swift gesture, he dispatched the remaining monsters, clearing the path. He then leaned over the fallen figure, concern etched into his face. After a while, the protagonist opened his eyes to find himself in a cave, lying on soft fur. Sitting across from him was Tenin, calm and watchful, awaiting his awakening. The demigod looked at him sharply. "Are you awake? How are you feeling?" he inquired. Gathering his strength, the protagonist responded, "His body? Yes, I can confirm. There's a mark on it." As he inspected himself, he was astonished to find both the scars and the sign of sacrifice had vanished entirely. Confused by this sudden healing, he wondered how such a thing could be possible. The demigod, casually puffing on his pipe, explained that he hadn't used his healing technique in a long while, yet it still worked effectively. The protagonist expressed gratitude, apologizing for the surprise. He added that he owed his survival entirely to his benefactor, the master, and thanked him sincerely. Tenin chuckled softly, dismissing his thanks, and said it was all happenstance. He'd only stumbled upon him by chance. Toma, listening nearby, asked with curiosity about those who had fallen. The demigod repeated his words, clarifying that he had only dispatched the monsters. The protagonist froze in surprise. He had fought that horde alone, determinately, and knew well that within this land of the sun, the strength of swordsmen and demons was classified into 6 tiers: purple, blue, red, yellow, white, and black. Most fallen were typically white-ranked, but the groups of fallen he'd encountered seemed to be at least blue or red. The key point was that reaching Gokuma Island was impossible without being at least purple-ranked. His willingness to come to this island of his own accord indicated significant prowess. If so, there should be clues in his aura. Yet the presence of the master's soul was so faint that he hardly noticed it when called upon. Only one being could account for all these phenomena, an entity of divine origin. Toma asked if his savior was a demigod. Tenin, surprised, acknowledged that the boy was already aware of such beings. The protagonist nodded. Demigods, he explained, are humans who have transcended into a divine realm, rare individuals who've managed to escape mortal life entirely. Bowing deeply, he admitted that he never thought such a phenomenon would be of help to him. Tenin, noticing his formality, waved it off. Gods, demigods, deities, names matter little. They are often eccentrics, and that's what makes them remarkable. The protagonist looked at him in astonishment. The demigod then inquired about his purpose on this island. The protagonist hesitated, replying that it was not an exciting story. Nonetheless, he recounted how he ended up here. He tried to keep it brief but ended up explaining everything from the beginning to the end. He apologized shyly, explaining he wanted to be concise but had been carried away. Tenon listened patiently and assured him it was fine. He understood. The young man wondered if perhaps the brand on him, an activation marker, a tracking symbol, was related. This mark was designed to attract demons, shadowing their prey. Those branded were monitored constantly, their movements, lives, and deaths tracked in meticulous detail. This purpose was to prevent escape and guarantee a precise death if necessary. When he had removed the mark, the tracking system must have registered his death. He voiced this realization aloud. A grim tale unfurled before him. What he planned to do next remained a mystery, even to himself. The protagonist hesitated, uncertain and still reeling from recent events. His mind hadn't yet fully processed what had transpired. The demigod had offered him a chance to return to his hometown, inviting him to accompany him. Yet Toma hesitated, worried about having nowhere to stay and the consequences of being recognized. Returning home might mean exposure, and that could bring even greater suffering, especially given his fragile form unable to withstand magic's toll. Wherever he went, he sensed rejection awaited him. Tenon gently patted his head and urged him to reveal his true desire. The protagonist looked at him with confusion and admitted, "I just want to live. I want my mother to be proud that I'm alive." The demigod considered this with a thoughtful expression before responding, "To live, that's a good answer." Then he asked for his name. After the protagonist introduced himself, Tenon nodded approvingly and declared, "Excellent. Then he shall become his apprentice." The protagonist was taken aback, questioning if the demigod truly wished to apprentice him. A faint smile curved Tenon's lips as he stroked his sparse beard and explained, "Honestly, his life is already nearing its end." Toma couldn't believe what he heard. Was it possible for demigods to die of old age? Tenon confirmed this was the truth. Demigods, he explained, were human after all, and every human eventually dies. Having attained enlightenment, the demigod had glimpsed the true nature of existence, the cycle of beginning and end. Still, a persistent feeling haunted him. Something he felt was missing. To uncover it, he decided to explore the world more deeply. He observed proud, reckless individuals living to their fullest, driven by worldly desires. Yet, alongside darkness and chaos, he also saw flashes of pure kindness and innocence. He perceived much beauty and sorrow in this vast world, but still questioned what legacy he would leave behind after passing. To ensure his knowledge endured beyond his fleeting life, he resolved to teach the demigod everything he knew. The demigod then pointed a finger at the startled young man and explained, "He spent centuries perfecting his martial skills, mastering every technique. In that moment, he realized that passing on this knowledge would cement his legacy permanently in this world." The protagonist, overwhelmed, claimed he understood, but inside he felt it was all futile. Tenon looked at him with perplexity, puzzled by his words. The young man continued, "My body doesn't even possess magic. With such a useless shell, everything is pointless." The demigod reassured him calmly, "There's no need to worry. I will help restore your magic." Toma stared in disbelief. Did he hear correctly? Could they truly do that? Tenon nodded confidently. Of course, it would involve enduring excruciating pain, comparable to thousands of hellish trials. He asked if the young man knew what a celestial body was. The protagonist shook his head. The demigod explained that a celestial body was a unique technique for amplifying magic flow, a method called the heavenly demon's body. But he warned not to confuse it with other paths. Although subtle, the differences are significant. He made the differences between the concepts unmistakably clear, remarking that, judging by his observations, he had already mastered the fundamentals. Toma admitted that he had been training since birth and survived solely on nutritional pills. Tenon listened with understanding, realizing the core issue. His divine body was incomplete. Magic originated in the heart and then spread through the organs. Only after reaching the muscles did it grant extraordinary strength. The root of his weakness was that his body contained an excess of magic, which it could not contain properly. Listening intently, the protagonist was surprised and asked, "Then he should have died." The demigod explained that his case was exceptional. His magic flow was too narrow, preventing proper circulation. Essentially, only a small part of his true power circulated through his body. Roughly speaking, this condition had actually saved his life, or he would have perished in infancy. The protagonist felt confusion and bewilderment, unable to comprehend what he was hearing. Tenon continued, saying that his mother likely realized this issue and absorbed some of his magic to keep him alive, which explains her early death. The thought moved the protagonist almost to tears. The demigod summarized that the first step was to widen his magic pathways. Once they were restored, they needed to accelerate the flow and restore normal circulation of magic through his body. Toma asked incredulously whether his body would then recover. The demigod clarified that simply restoring the pathways wouldn't suffice. Prolonged stagnation had weakened his veins, making them unable to handle a strong magic flow immediately. To fully repair them, the doctors would have to repeatedly destroy and rebuild these pathways. When the magic flow was reopened, the pain would be excruciating. Was he prepared for such agony? The protagonist thought in confusion. Restoring his magic meant enduring unbearable torment, yet he agreed without hesitation. Tenon asked once more if he was certain. The protagonist remembered being sacrificed due to his weakness and no longer wanted to live that way. He bowed to the demigod and pleaded, "Please, let him help me." Tenon extended his hand and replied, "Very well, then have his student prepare. It's time to begin." Lifting the protagonist with his magic, he started expanding his currents, instructing him to endure and keep consciousness. If he failed to do so, he would die. The protagonist began to tremble, feeling as if his body was being torn apart alive. The pain was hellish. Blood streamed from his eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. All his muscles convulsed violently, and he cried out in a savage, inhuman scream. Tenon watched in astonishment. His magic was too powerful for the body to handle. His healing techniques proved insufficient. He shouted at Toma to concentrate, warning that otherwise his body would explode. The protagonist writhed terribly, gasping and wheezing through the pain. His entire form was racked with agony unlike anything he had previously experienced. Yet somehow he endured it. In his heart he swore he would never die. The demigod regarded him with a mixture of respect and admiration. His entire body endured excruciating pain yet remained steadfast, unwavering in his resolve. Victory was within reach. They had almost succeeded. His willpower was extraordinary. After some time, the protagonist lay limp in Tenon's arms, utterly exhausted. Toman was not much better, barely catching his breath and struggling to speak. Finally, the ordeal concluded. Tenon looked at the unconscious young man and reflected. Even with the strength of a demigod, he was pushing his magic to its limits. But he endured. The demigod let out a sigh and mused aloud. What a troublesome student he's been. He attempted to wake the protagonist, but Toma remained unresponsive. Tenon scolded himself for pushing too far, realizing that all he needed was to teach him how to control such power. 5 years had passed since the training began, and the young hero had turned 15. During his next trial, he faced a three-eyed, deranged demon. He assumed a battle stance and invoked a celestial technique that summoned mountains to fall. At first, he simply crushed his opponent's head into his body, then tore the creature apart. Despite the demon's relentless resistance, it proved futile. Once the demon was defeated, Tenon praised his student's impressive progress. He commended him for doing remarkably well. Toma was taken aback by his appearance. The demigod expressed his satisfaction that he was already capable of defeating three-eyed demons. Yet, he noted, there was still room for refinement. The young warrior hung eagerly on every word. The teacher reflected that, in merely 5 years, his student had grasped the fundamentals of celestial techniques, but he still had a long journey ahead to match his own mastery. Analyzing his own recent fight, Toma thought that if he had dodged earlier, he could have defeated his opponent a few seconds faster. Observing him with a gentle smile, Tenin told him that his final test was approaching. The young hero looked at him in confusion, questioning what was next. He still had much to learn. The demigod explained that he hadn't taught him everything, but he had already mastered the basics. The last step was to refine his skills to perfection. Tenin then revealed that his time was nearly up. He placed his hand on his face, and his eye appeared through the skin. He solemnly continued, reminding Toma that he had mentioned before. Time was running out. Now it had arrived. With tears welling in his eyes, the young warrior looked at him anxiously. Tenin, however, was indignant. He insisted that a student shouldn't see his teacher off with sorrow. Instead, he believed one should part with a bright smile. There was no need for worry now. His final challenge was to reach the very heart of the island. The deeper he went, the stronger the demons would become, culminating in a battalion of purple-ranked monsters at the core. Still, he was confident his student could succeed. Toma assured him he would do his best. The teacher added that, upon reaching the center, he would attain the power he had always dreamed of, and perhaps discover what he had been seeking all along. MC, startled, repeated his question. What exactly were you searching for? Tenin responded cautiously, unsure if an exit existed. Yet, considering the extensive time he had spent on this island, leaving was surely possible. Still, first he had to pass a final test. Only then could he pursue his true desires, return home or embark on a new journey. He should follow his heart's longing. Wasn't that what he truly sought? Toma answered with firm certainty. He understood that Tenin would definitely complete the test and afterward would pursue his own path. Both of them were overwhelmed with emotion, barely able to hold back tears at their impending separation. The teacher spoke quietly. All right? He felt glad to have spent these years sharing his life with his beloved student. They bade farewell, and Tenin disappeared into thin air. The protagonist gazed at the sky for a long moment, recalling how his teacher had expressed happiness at having been with him all that time. The teacher had given him so much. In truth, he had dedicated his life to guiding him. Those moments remained among the happiest of his existence. Overwhelmed by emotion, he finally could endure no longer. His knees buckled, and he collapsed onto the sand, tears flowing freely as he whispered words of gratitude to his dear mentor. More than 2 years had passed since the teacher's death, yet his memory lingered vividly. Now, the protagonist was undertaking the final challenge Tenin had set for him. He ventured deep into the island's heart, where his first opponent was a formidable purple-ranked demon, a colossal wolf. The battle was fierce, and victory only came after he cast the Mountain Fall spell. The next purple-ranked demons that appeared were enormous, ferocious apes, terrifying behemoths that he dodged at the speed of sound to evade. Subsequently, he encountered a giant toad, also ranked purple. Its lethal tongue grabbed his leg, pulling him toward its gaping mouth. At that moment, the furious apes arrived. Toma gathered their forces, activating his divine technique to summon a storm and a piercing strike. A powerful gust of wind surged around them, swirling their enemies into a whirlwind. Meanwhile, the protagonist unleashed his own deadly strike, hammering the monsters. Soon, the demons lay defeated. He had little time to catch his breath when the most formidable purple-ranked demon of all, a black skeletal figure, appeared before him. The protagonist summoned his magic power and faced the creature boldly, recalling his teacher's words. Everything in this world could be overcome. If he pinpointed the enemy's weakness, he should gather his strength and strike with everything he had. In that moment, he activated the reverse heavens technique, focusing his magic, and called forth a divine assault. A devastating wave of energy crashed down, dismantling the black skeleton bone by bone. He exhaled heavily, then scanned his surroundings and declared, "This is the heart of the island." Just as his teacher had predicted, he would find what he was searching for here. Yet, He sensed an overwhelming aura of magic emanating from this place, a colossal pressure that made each breath more difficult. Standing resolutely before the entrance to the heart of the island, the protagonist declared, "He will see what awaits him here." Toma stepped onto the threshold, protected by a magical aura. His ears caught the voice of the demon that had spoken earlier. It took quite some time for events to unfold. The protagonist's body began trembling as if it was disintegrating. Suddenly, he was propelled upwards, flying through the entire tunnel in a rapid burst. He cursed aloud, bewildered by the strange phenomena. His confusion deepened when he entered a chamber and encountered the demon directly. The demon explained that, having reached this point, the protagonist must have defeated all the island's demons, save for one final trial, confronting him. Should the hero succeed, any wish would be granted. The demon challenged him to demonstrate his strength. The protagonist stared in shock. The demon hovered near the ceiling of a shimmering magical dome. Toma, perplexed, asked, "Is his body transparent?" The demon nodded and replied, "Of course. His body isn't here, only his spirit. Don't worry so much. He's in this state now too." The hero examined himself and realized the demon was right. He exclaimed in amazement, "What is this?" The demon explained that the adversary had shifted into spirit form, creating a barrier at the entrance that only a soul could pass through, leaving his physical body lying there. The hero was stunned, unable to grasp what was happening. The demon chuckled, remarking that he didn't expect the hero's ancestors to be so naive. Toma was even more surprised. "Ancestors?" he echoed. The demon looked at him with confusion, asking why he seemed so surprised. "Isn't he a descendant of the divine dragon clan? Why doesn't he possess a ruler's blade?" Toma thought he had misunderstood. The divine dragon clan was the royal family, and the ruler's blade was the imperial sword, a relic he couldn't possibly have. Perhaps this island was a trial designed for the descendants of the imperial house. The demon, puzzled, said, "He doesn't understand what's happening here. Then, he'll just have to see for himself." With that, he brandished a weapon and lunged at the hero, teasing him to try not to die too quickly. Surprised, Toma realized the demon held a soul blade. The attack came so suddenly that he had no time to dodge or defend and was slammed against the wall with tremendous force. Gasping in shock, he thought, "What is this sensation?" His mind flooded with strange thoughts. The demon approached, declaring that he was convinced of the hero's heritage. Surely a descendant. The hero wanted to request a halt, but the demon struck again. This time, Toma was alert enough to dodge, but each attack caused a sharp pain in his head. The demon's techniques were cruel, seemingly designed to pass pain on to him. Despite the relentless assault from all sides, Toma kept his focus, recognizing every blow and evading them just in time. Still, the sensation in his mind persisted, an intense, almost unbearable pain. The demon observed him with a flicker of respect in his eyes. "He has sharp vision," he noted aloud. Toma realized he couldn't track all his opponent's movements without aid. He needed to enhance his sight with magic, enabling him to anticipate incoming techniques. Yet, this adversary was growing stronger with each attack, making the challenge even fiercer. The demon hinted that, in his view, Toma could become far more formidable if he harnessed his potential fully. Struggling with doubt, Toma felt a sense of helplessness. He wondered if victory was impossible, but at the same time, losing would mean disappointing his master deeply. Determined not to give up, he set his resolve and stared at his opponent with defiance, shouting not to be underestimated. He knew he had to push himself beyond his limits. Toma attempted to launch an attack, but his foe deftly dodged every strike. Calmly, the demon asked if he could foresee his moves. Then, at an astonishing speed, he began to move, each step a blur. "If that's the case," he declared, "let's see if you can handle this technique." Without warning, he launched a flurry of strikes from multiple directions, leaving Toma momentarily stunned. Summoning his strength, Toma invoked the Stormbreak technique, channeling all his energy into a powerful counterattack. His opponent was visibly surprised, leaping aside with a broad grin. "Quite impressive," he said, still smiling. "The outside world seems far more intriguing now." It was clear that the fight amused him greatly. He assumed a combat stance, swung his sword with confidence, and declared that he would show what true strength looked like. The pressure mounted on Toma, making him realize he wasn't joking. It hadn't been a game, he had been holding back. Now, it was time to attack in earnest before the demon could strike first. Quickly, Toma charged forward, aiming to unleash the heaven-crushing technique. His opponent countered with lightning-fast swordsmanship, activating the lightning flash technique. In a flash, he sliced off Toma's arm. With a sly smile, he asked how his opponent liked that move. Toma collapsed to his knees, eyes wide with shock, convinced he had lost, silently asking his master for forgiveness. The demon approached him and gave him a sharp tap on the forehead, forcing him to look up. "Why are you so lost?" he asked sharply. "Do you think all your training could have made you this strong? Even now, you wouldn't have managed to defeat me." Despite everything, the demon acknowledged that his opponent had fought with full strength to make him proud. Feeling a flicker of calm, Toma reflected that his defeat might simply be the result of his opponent's superior training. Perhaps he wouldn't have won anyway. Looking at his wounded arm, he marveled. Are his wounds healing? Then, glancing at his sword, he wondered whether the demon believed he could pass his techniques to his descendants. If everyone perished here, that was what the barrier was for, although the demon wouldn't train weaklings. They exchanged glances, acknowledging each other. Toma stood, bowed respectfully, and apologized for his failure, expressing gratitude for the lesson. The demon nodded with a smile and inquired calmly, "By the way, what is your name?" The protagonist introduced himself, and the demon asked thoughtfully, "Are you from a branch family?" He was amazed at how thoroughly he had mastered hand-to-hand combat techniques. "So, in the land of the sun, they now teach close-quarters combat," he remarked. However, he quickly added that this wasn't entirely accurate. All of it was thanks to his instructor. The man chuckled softly and, with a gentle smile, described himself as a kind person. Throughout his life, he had never taken on a single student, as no one had proven worthy of learning his techniques. The heir to the land of the sun must possess extraordinary strength to claim the throne. To find a suitable successor, a special test was devised, one that involved asking only a single question. What is happening to the land of the sun at this moment? The candidate looked at him, slightly puzzled, and answered that the country was thriving. The instructor then smiled, indicating that the candidate's worries were unfounded, and that he would have been happy to have such a student during his lifetime. He stroked his chin thoughtfully, acknowledging his meaning, and realized that he had already become his teacher in a certain sense. Though the understanding was incomplete, it seemed he had already transmitted his techniques. The man looked at him and stated that he had come here and fought him solely with martial skills. He hadn't truly been acting as a teacher, he argued. Toma responded that, in fact, he had demonstrated many new techniques, almost mentoring him. The man smiled and asked whether he now had a student. Despite being a master of hand-to-hand combat, it appeared he would also enjoy teaching swordsmanship. After all, he had trained extensively with a sword. In that case, he had passed the test and would be granted a reward. The master's own blade would be his. The protagonist stared at the sword in astonishment and declared that he was unworthy of such a gift. The master replied with a broad smile that he was indeed deserving of the blade. When he tried to object, the master gently struck him on the head and told him not to worry over trivial things. He had passed the test and earned this sword. He had every right to wield it. The blade belonged to him already and would soon disappear. Instead of wasting it, it should serve him better. He nodded in agreement. Grasping the sword, he made a swift, decisive motion, unleashing a powerful wave of energy. Glancing at the weapon, he admitted that, though it was merely a trinket, it was a shame to lose such an artifact. The protagonist was taken aback by this and reflected on the significance of the heirloom, passed down for countless generations of the imperial family. The teacher swung his sword and asked why he had become so tense again. He needed to prepare or risk dying. If he didn't need the sword, then he should try to defeat his opponent. With a confused expression, he asked for a moment to reconsider, but the master ignored his hesitation and declared it was time to begin their deadly duel. They crossed blades, and the master smiled broadly, announcing that the battle was about to start. At that moment, a girl, unconscious, was carried onto the island's shore. Some time later, he continued to battle his teacher, convinced that 7 full years had already passed since his sacrifice and exile to Demon Island. Initially, he believed this ordeal marked the end of his journey. Fortunately, he encountered a master who imparted him with celestial techniques. Although much was happening now, there was no need for his mother to worry. He was safe. It seemed that time within the dungeon and outside flowed at completely different rates. He felt as if he had been training there for several years, yet outside, not even a single day had elapsed. The barrier separating his soul from his body helped him endure the intensive training, but he doubted whether such training would benefit his physical form. His master observed him and implied that he might think the solitude and effort would have no effect on his physique. The young man refuted this notion, asserting that all effort bears fruit, and maintained a calm demeanor, assuring his teacher that there was no cause for concern. He explained that his spiritual body also possessed its own form, and that his magical energy was being diligently cultivated. With continued practice, his power would grow exponentially. When he returned to his physical body, it would become stronger, capable of withstanding this newfound energy. He wondered aloud whether such immense magical strength might be too much for his body to handle, fearing the possibility of death. After contemplating this, he acknowledged that it was indeed a risk and resolved to discover the truth upon his return. Anxiety crept in, and his teacher noticed his hand starting to dissolve. The teacher then remarked that it seemed his time had come, which caused the young man to worry and ask what was happening to his body. Smiling kindly, his master explained that he had already left this world's plane, and that his divine essence would now forever depart. He gently stroked his head and reassured him that he need not fear, for he had a successor to whom he could pass on his knowledge. With this, he could embrace peace. Surprised, Tomo bowed respectfully, expressing his deep gratitude for the soul blade and all the teachings he had received. The teacher called him over and told him he needed to believe in himself more. Since arriving here, he had constantly doubted his worth. Why he had become like this remained a mystery to him, and he had no desire to understand it. Nonetheless, he had overcome all trials set before him. By continuing to belittle his achievements, he also insulted his master's legacy. He was instructed to answer whether he wished to persist in degrading his teacher's memory. He denied it wholeheartedly, clenched his fist, and thought that he was justified. To belittle himself was to dishonor the sacrifices and teachings of those who had guided him. With a serious expression, he vowed never to forget this lesson. The master chuckled and praised his response, calling him by name and asking if he could answer one more question. Without hesitation, he affirmed that he was a good teacher. He waved with a smile as his figure faded away, remarking that he was glad to have such a diligent student. Pride shimmered in his expression. After vanishing, he bowed slightly, but his attention was suddenly drawn to a tremor he felt beneath him. Startled, he leapt back just as a massive stone crashed down from above, prompting him to shout in surprise, "Is the cave collapsing?" He quickly realized the exit was blocked. His body began to be pulled toward the enormous stone upon which a single blade's inscription was visible. He stared at it, pondering whether it was drawing him in. In an instant, he found himself transported to an unfamiliar place where rain poured continuously. He looked around, wondering if he had returned to his physical body, yet he soon realized he was still in spirit form. From behind, a creature approached, and anxiety crept over him as he perceived the ominous aura radiating from it. It was evident that only the first demon could possess such formidable power. His trembling body reflected his fear as he understood his chances of victory were slim. If he attacked, he would most likely be slain. The demon began gathering energy before it, forming a concentrated mass, but suddenly a powerful wave of energy cut through the air, severing the demon's arm. The teacher chuckled softly, a broad grin appearing after the blow, revealing that the demon now seemed utterly furious. Sensing the need to end it, the protagonist turned, gazing at his opponent with a look of surprise. The demon summoned several spectral hands and launched multiple beams of energy. He instinctively deflected these attacks with his sword. Then, in a swift motion, he lunged forward, aiming to strike. His powerful blow exploded into a formidable shockwave. Watching from the side, he was stunned, perplexed by what was happening. Was that a shadow step? From the moment the teacher initiated combat, he'd lost track of the various techniques being used. Nevertheless, he understood the nature of this battle, a story well known in the land of the sun. Only a single individual possessed enough strength to stand against the demon there, regarded as a true hero by all. Witnessing the fight firsthand, it felt as though a single strike had toppled the demon god, the first emperor of the land of the sun, the divine dragon. The teacher swung his sword and, smirking, declared that it was the end. With a final, decisive strike, he slew the demon. The protagonist watched intently and speculated that the stone might hold memories of that moment, perhaps representing a final gift inscribed in it. According to legend, the first emperor had defeated a mighty demon and sealed it away on Demon Island. To placate its rage, a sacrifice was required every decade. Yet, all that remained on the island now was the spirit of the emperor himself. Originally, people were sent there to undergo the emperor's test. Over centuries, the purpose was forgotten, and the island became a dumping ground for unwanted individuals. Throughout all this time before his arrival, the emperor's spirit endured in solitude. He perceived his body beginning to fade and wondered aloud, "Will he return?" Then, he loudly called out to the first emperor, proclaiming himself as the successor to his power. He was about to utter his name, but suddenly found himself expelled from the realm. His mind believed he had uncovered a secret dungeon at the very heart of Demon Island, but it had collapsed before he could explore further. At that moment, his soul was pulled back into his body. Deep beneath the surface of the infernal landscape, the true emperor was born from the abyss itself. When Toma returned to consciousness, he clenched his screams in pain as a strange, fiery power surged through him. The agony was overwhelming. His memories flashed back to when he was 10 years old, pondering aloud, "Is he talking about form?" Tenrin's voice echoed. "So he's aware. Magical energy flows throughout the body. To use it effectively, you must shape it into a form." He questioned how this differed from ordinary magic. Tenren looked at him intently and asked, "Have you tried it yet?" He demonstrated a simple hand gesture, suggesting he emulate it. Toma attempted, but he couldn't reproduce the movement, unable even to fold his hand the same way. Smiling gently, Tenran reassured him, "That's not crucial. Repeating a specific motion when casting magic will give it that form. The power of the magic can grow depending on this form." The form was a reflection of his technique. Once established, it could be invoked at will, or even imposed onto others. Recalling recent events, Toma realized it resembled when the protagonist boldly declared his intention to try. He believed that, as the first emperor had stated, his body was adapting to this new form of power. Learning healing techniques was helpful, yet it appeared he was also developing a shape for his magic. He thought that by studying the memories of the great demon, he could influence this forming process. During battles, the emperor's movements seemed textbook perfect. His attacks were precise, yet during training he was entirely different, a completely different person. The first emperor's signature technique, the divine blade, could truly slay even gods. To Toma, those tales once seemed mythical, but now he understood that his power was real, not fiction. Despite possessing incredible skills, he knew he still had much to learn. Grabbing a nearby sword, he reminded himself never to forget the heavenly techniques. He was fortunate to have two exceptional teachers, and he was determined to meet their expectations. Suddenly, he heard thunder echo across the mountain's peak and observed the surrounding chaos. "Come to think of it," he mused, "the island is unusually noisy." Then he saw a massive monster hurtling toward him at great speed. With quick reflexes, he blocked the attack with his sword. The purple demon Wanudo glared at him and roared loudly. Toma quickly retreated from the creature, recognizing the ferocity of the assault. Such force would have shattered an ordinary blade, but each sacred blade of Mato held a special, formidable power. The divine sword, the first of these blades, possessed the unique ability to never break. After destroying the demon, Toma reflected that the fight was not particularly remarkable. The power of the first sword was admittedly limited, but that was understandable given its nature. The divine style of dual swordsmanship the user employed was far too formidable. An ordinary sacred blade simply couldn't withstand such techniques and would break under the assault. The man sank to the ground, catching his breath, realizing once again how challenging it was to control magical energy. Indeed, practicing this fencing style remained perilous in real combat situations. Any other ability besides unbreakability would be redundant, yet he was aware of the King of Swords, though he had never heard of the divine sword. The king possessed the ability to summon sacred blades, while the divine sword only seemed to possess the power to resist breaking. Nonetheless, he took comfort in this, something he could never attain, regardless of his desire. It was time to cease being a parasite and instead become the guardian of his teacher's legacy in this world, honoring their kindness. With his current strength, crossing the sea would be straightforward. Yet, he felt paralyzed at the thought of venturing beyond the island. When contemplating the world outside, his legs trembled, and courage eluded him. Suddenly, hearing footsteps, he turned toward the forest, sensing someone approaching. It was not a demon, but someone else. A strange aura emanated from the figure. He saw a girl sprinting out and wondered, "Is that human?" She raised her hand, commanding him not to move, and loudly declared that he was not allowed to proceed. He was expected to respond with, "Who is he?" Thomas stared at her in shock, unable to comprehend her words. On the coast of the Land of the Sun earlier, she was Riz, an adventurer. She had been sailing aboard a merchant vessel, guarding it on behalf of the guild, heading toward the Land of the Sun. A demon had approached her, sneering that it was remarkable an rank adventurer was fighting so fiercely. She believed she was not alone, but it turned out she was fighting alone. When he looked at her, she loudly demanded to know why he had targeted her. Dark energy surged from him as he explained that her kind was a real obstacle. At the last moment, she raised her hands and conjured a shield to defend herself from his attack. He approached the shore and ridiculed her decision, warning that the currents of the Land of the Sun were turbulent and swarming with monsters, making escape nearly impossible. As she started to drown, she resolved to survive at all costs. After the mountain was shattered, she was carried ashore on the island and instantly began coughing. With a scowl, she declared that she would never forgive that freak. Her magic was once again in motion, but she had nearly exhausted it battling the sea's relentless currents. Fortunately, her magic backpack had survived, which was a relief since it contained a portable magical ship. However, crossing the sea of the Land of the Sun on a small vessel was a risky, one-way journey, and she had no clear idea of her current location. She could only hope that someone nearby might help. Suddenly, a pack of demons sped past her. Shocked, she stared and questioned aloud, "What kind of island is this? It's full of monsters. Like a nightmare. I can't fight them now." To her astonishment, she noticed a demonic triangle bear, its rank indicating considerable power, eyeing her intently. As the creature lunged, she reacted swiftly, commanding lightning to ensnare it. She cast a lightning rope spell, but the beast brushed off her magic with its claws. Fear gripped her as the monster swung its paw, yet unexpectedly, it started retreating. Turning, she saw a weaker demonic spider scurrying nearby. When the larger beast attempted to attack her, a mighty wave, created by the protagonist, intervened and saved her. Ri, trembling with fear, thought she sensed a familiar pattern. This island was surrounded by furious sea waves, creating an ecosystem teeming with every kind of monster. It was a land of exile from which none ventured and returned alive. This dangerous place, the island of Neokuma, was notorious among the land of the sun's regions. Determined not to die here, she sprinted ashore, scanning the area, wondering if anyone was around. She attempted to use magic to bind a nearby figure, but he scratched his face and, with a puzzled smile, said he didn't understand her words. Frustrated, she snapped that he shouldn't pretend ignorance. At that moment, a bear charged at them with a vicious swipe. She closed her eyes in terror, bracing for impact. Instead, she heard a loud strike, opened her eyes, and was stunned to see him had slain the beast with a single powerful blow. It was as if he had dispatched the giant in an instant. She wondered, could this be the legendary flame of the land? This man possessed incredible strength, yet she felt no presence of him nearby. Despite his formidable power, as an A-rank adventurer, she couldn't sense his aura. Smiling kindly, he said everything was fine now, completely forgetting their language barrier. What could be done? She reached into her bag and pulled out a tongue ring. When worn, this ring enabled the wearer to understand all languages. She gestured for him to try it, and he asked if he simply needed to put it on. Once he did, she asked who he was and where they had ended up. The protagonist was surprised by the ring's effect, apologized, and introduced himself. He explained they were on Neokuma Island. Ri pondered this and clarified, "You're from a noble family in the land of the sun, aren't you?" He explained that the family she spoke of maintained close ties with the imperial household, yet they had no connection to him personally. She could simply call him by his name, which eased her nerves somewhat, and she realized that he wasn't hostile. Expressing her gratitude for his assistance, she mentioned there was no need for formalities. A casual tone felt more natural. He agreed, promising to speak more normally. Then, curiosity prompted him to ask her identity. She introduced herself as an A-rank adventurer from the Kingdom of Ars. His puzzled expression revealed he didn't understand what that meant, and her reaction was one of surprise. She explained that it appeared he didn't even recognize the rank with just a word ring. She inquired how long he had been stranded on this island. Calmly, he replied it had been about 7 years. Her astonishment grew as she realized he had endured the island for that length of time. She surmised it was understandable that he might be unaware of recent developments, noting that only in recent years had relations between the Kingdom of Ars and the country of the sun intensified. Many mainlanders now resided within the sun's borders. He looked thoughtful and asked what the country was like now. Her legs buckled under her weight, and she nearly collapsed, but he caught her, noting her magic was likely depleted rather than her physically injured. Perhaps exhaustion had worn her down. Gently, he laid her on the ground and asked if she could wait a moment. He indicated a nearby bear that had just begun to rise after his attack, signaling it to approach. She pointed her finger at the beast sharply and demanded, "What kind of bear is this?" Toma apologized for not knowing, then began to prepare to kill the monster. He explained that the island was teeming with rare Yugai creatures, innately magical beasts. He called this one a triangle bear, quite a simple name. Yet, its gallbladder was a highly nutritious delicacy. He placed it on a plate and offered, "Here, she can drink this." Her eyes widened in horror as she exclaimed loudly, "You're joking, right? There's no way I can drink that." He looked upset, apologized quickly, and clarified he wouldn't force her. She also apologized, acknowledging that it was a bit much, but still appreciated his effort. He kept drinking, reflecting that she was the first visitor on this island and that he had been reckless. To offer such a thing at their first encounter seemed over the top. Watching him enjoy it, she was appalled. She remarked that she was observing him. He looked at her and asked what she planned to do now. She replied that, if possible, she would return home. However, she had heard that the island was surrounded by a turbulent sea where even large ships could sink. Leaving seemed impossible unless she could somehow cross that stormy ocean. He inquired if she had crossed the sea before. Could she return home? Ri, with a contemplative expression, mentioned that she possessed a magical boat capable of traveling anywhere. She was certain of the correct direction to her homeland, yet she hesitated and shook her head, firmly insisting it remained impossible. Crossing the sea in a small vessel, especially with monsters lurking, seemed too risky without the aid of teleportation magic. The protagonist gently extended his hand, asking if he could escort her back. Her surprise was evident. She found his offer bewildering, believing that his words and actions often exceeded all normal limits.